Hi guys, my name is Imran, and in this tutorial we are going to learn what Babel is, how does it work, why do we need it, how does it work behind the scenes. We'll also discuss about installing Babel with Babel CLI and using it with Webpack as well. So it's going to be all about Babel. So let's get up. So first of all, let's understand why do we need Babel. Okay, so to understand this, let's talk about arrow functions. So as we all know that arrow functions came in ECMAScript 6 version of JavaScript. Now, not all browsers would understand that, right? So JavaScript is getting better and better. So we have modern JavaScript features that are available that we can use. However, not all browsers would understand that. So if I go to caniuse.com and if I type arrow functions, you can see that most of the browsers support, but some of them don't. For example, Internet Explorer doesn't support it, then BlackBerry browser, Opera Mini, IE Mobile don't support it. So a lot of browsers do support it, but you know, it's always the case with Internet Explorer, they take time. Okay, but the idea is that because the technology is moving, JavaScript is getting better and better, browsers do take some time to adapt that, right? Internet Explorer will always be the last, you know that. Okay, great. So what do we do then? So we need to convert this ECMAScript 6 into the JavaScript which browsers can understand, all browsers can understand basically. So we need to convert into ES5, which is the normal function, right? So how do we do that? So that's where your Babel comes to rescue. So what is the job of Babel? What does it do? The job of the Babel is to take an input source code and convert to output source code. Okay, but Babel on its own doesn't do anything. It needs something. Okay, what does it need? It needs plugins. Okay, so plugins actually help Babel to convert modern JavaScript into a JavaScript that browsers can understand. In fact, most browsers can understand. Okay, brilliant. Alright guys, so let's understand how does actually Babel work. Okay, so there's a guy who's thinking how does Babel work. Let's figure it out. So as we know, Babel is a compiler. Okay, it converts one source code to another source code. So let's understand what goes behind the scenes. Babel takes your source code. So this is your source code. Let's say this is our arrow function. Okay, and then it uses a parser called Babylon. Okay, and it converts it into AST, which is basically abstract syntax tree. Okay, so if we go to astexplorer.net and if I type an arrow function over here, you can see that it is actually converting it into abstract syntax tree. If I just minimize this, you can see that inside of body you have this information, all of that information, right? Great. So after it converts into AST, okay, it actually transforms the modified code. Okay, so it traverses the tree first. Okay, so it traverses the tree. It'll go step by step. It'll go over here, it'll read this, it will read variable declaration, it'll go to type, it'll check declaration. So it's going to traverse through this tree of basically this abstract syntax tree. It's going to traverse through that. Okay, and then modify the code as needed. And once it does that, then it's going to generate the output for you. All right, with the help of the plugins. So that's how the Babel works behind the scenes. It takes the source code, it passes using Babylon, okay, and construct an abstract syntax tree, and then it transforms that. It traverses through this tree and then transforms it and modify it as needed, and then finally outputs the source code for the transform AST and the source map too. Okay. If you want to try it out live, you can go to babel.js.io/n. So if I type an ES6 function over here, so I will say add num is equal to, and this passed a parameter param1, param2, and then arrow function. I'm going to return something. Return param1 plus param2. So you can see that it's converted into ES5 code, right? And that's exactly what we want. We want to provide support for all browsers because not all browsers support the modern JavaScript. And technology is moving and JavaScript is getting better and better. So ES5, ES6, and anything after ES 2015 basically Okay, you want to convert that, you can use Babel. All right. So guys, Babel uses these three steps, which is parsing into AST, then transforming by traversing through the tree, and then outputting the code, printing the code basically. So these are three steps that Babel takes to do its work behind the scenes. Okay, and as we discussed, out of the box, Babel doesn't do anything. It just basically acts like, converting one source code to another code. So we need plugin for that. So let's discuss, what are these Babel plugins. So Babel is built on a plugin system, guys. Okay, these plugins parse your modern JavaScript into AST and rewrites it into a version that can be interpreted by the browser. Okay, so Babel plugins are small JavaScript programs that instruct Babel on how to carry the transformation to the code. Since Babel plugins are small, so generally one plugin covers one feature. Okay, now guys, if you had to write one plugin at a time, it is not very good. So Babel provides you with a system called presets. Okay, so instead of adding all the plugins we want one by one, we can use presets. Okay, which is just predetermined set of plugins. Okay, so Babel's concept of presets help us determine which feature you want to use broadly. So presets are a group of plugins that Babel uses for its transpilation, and I just want to show that to you on the documentation. So if you go to Babel official site, they've got pretty detailed explanation of Babel. Okay, so you can even type your code over here and check it out here. Okay, if you go to docs and if you go to presets. Okay, right, so you can see common ones are preset-env, preset-flow, preset-react, that's for React, that's for TypeScript. Okay, so if you click on preset-env, okay, you can get all the information about how to install it, what are different configuration, all of that stuff. Okay, so one of my favorite one is Babel preset-env, which is this one, right? So basically this Babel preset-env is a smart preset that allows you to use the latest JavaScript feature without needing to micromanage which syntax transforms and optionally browser polyfills are needed for your target environment. This makes your life a lot easier and JavaScript bundle a lot smaller. Okay, so without any configuration, this preset will include all the plugins to support modern JavaScript, ES 2015, ES 2016, etc. Now the question comes, guys, why do we need presets? Why do we use presets? So it'll be very interesting for you to know that earlier we used to transpile arrow functions to ES6 using Babel plugin transform ES 2015 arrow functions. Isn't that name too long? Yes, it is. Well, it was actually. So I just want to show that to you, that plugin. So Babel plugin transform ES 2015 arrow functions. Okay, so this was the plugin that was used. The problem is that most of the browsers are getting better day by day, and many of them now support the latest JavaScript features. So as we just discussed, if you go to caniuse.com, and I just showed that to you a while ago, and you type arrow functions, right, you can see most of the browsers are already supporting that, right? So they are supporting the arrow functions, some of them don't. So if they support it, if majority of them support it, you don't want to transpile it. If you do, then your app gets bigger and slower, because if there are browsers who are supporting arrow functions and you're still transpiling for them, then you're just making your codes larger, bigger, right? So in Babel 7, they introduced with Babel preset-env, okay, which is this one right here. Okay, so this is the most popular preset because it helps us specify what level of compatibility that you need for target that you intend to support the Babel. Okay, and Babel will automatically install the appropriate transformation plugin. So I just want to show that to you. So I know we haven't started coding yet, how to install and set up, but this is just to give you information of how these presets work. So Babel has a configuration file called babel-rc that you can define. So you can define this preset-env over here. Don't get worried too much about what is going on over here. This is just an overview. Okay, we will get into detail in some time. Okay, so you can define the preset-env. You can target different browsers. You can say that last two Chrome versions, last two Firefox, and so on. So you can actually target it instead of going ahead and transpiling for every browser. We are going to add support for the last two, so it's going to automatically pick up. Okay, so Babel will automatically install the appropriate transformation plugin when the browser version changes to the new one. That's why we're putting last two Chrome versions and not the specific ones. Okay, so this will ensure that when your browser is updated, it will stop transpiling of the old browser version and will transpile the new one. Okay, now, so guys, there's one more thing called polyfill. Okay, so what is actually polyfill? Okay, so polyfill is a code that implements a feature on the web browser that do not support the feature. So what happens is that when we use modern features of the language, some engines may fail to support such code, and here Babel comes to rescue. In order to provide support for certain features to work, they require certain polyfill. So polyfill basically bridges the gap between what is not being supported by providing that support. Okay, so there are two parts to Babel. One is transpile the code, and second is polyfill. Okay, so one is just transpiling the code, and polyfill is going to bridge the gap. So the transpiler rewrites the code so that syntax features are covered, but for new functions we need to write a special script that implements them, and JavaScript is highly dynamic language. Scripts may not just add new functions but also modify the built-in ones so that they can behave according to the modern standards. So there's a term polyfill for scripts. It's basically fills the gap and adds the missing implementations. Okay, so guys, we can say that Babel comprises of mainly plugins. Now presets are the group of plugins. Okay, and we have polyfills. Since Babel assumes that your code will run in ES5 environment, it uses ES5 functions. So if you're using an environment that has limited or no support for ES5 on lower versions of Internet Explorer, then using Babel polyfill will add support for these methods. Okay, and make sure you add the polyfills as a dependency and not dev dependency. Okay, so what did we learn in terms of features of Babel? The first thing is it can transform syntax. Okay, from a modern JavaScript to a JavaScript that browsers can understand. It provides polyfill features that are missing in your target environment through Babel polyfill. Okay, and it does the source code transformation. Alright guys, so this is basically, I hope by now you understand what Babel is. You can write down on your comment if you have any questions below the video. You will have the description. You will have all the information in the description box regarding the blog that I've written on this as well. Okay, and now we'll gear up for installation and setup. Okay guys, this is the blog that I've written on Medium, introduction to Babel, which will have all the information that we've discussed. Okay, and now what we're going to talk about is how to install and set it up and get it going for our project. So there's another blog that I've written which I'm going to take reference with, okay, which is this one right here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to discuss how to set it up with Babel CLI. I mean, you don't if you want to just use Babel for your project, and if you don't want to use Webpack just in case for testing environments, then you can use Babel CLI as well. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so let's create a directory, Babel project. We'll just write Babel project. Okay, sorry, mkdir, I keep forgetting. Babel project, cd Babel project. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is just use npm init yes, and the yes flag is going to ensure that it does not ask you any questions and just take all the default configuration, and this is going to create a package.json file. So you can see that name is Babel project, version number, description is nothing, main file is index.js, and all of that information. If you just check ls, you have package.json inside of it, and basically that is the content of the package.json. Okay, brilliant. I'm assuming that you already have Node installed on your system. If you don't, you can just go to nodejs.org and just install Node from here, and it will automatically come pre-installed with npm, which is the Node package manager. Okay, great. So let's install Babel core and Babel CLI first. Okay, so we're going to do npm install, and you can use save dev, or you can also use a short form, just -D, which is going to make sure it gets installed as the dependency. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this project into my PHP Storm. You can use any of the code editors that you want, it's completely fine. Okay, so Babel project, this is the one. I will be putting the codes on GitHub as well, so you don't have to worry. You can always take reference from that, or you can take reference from the blog. You also need to install polyfill. Remember, we spoke about this, that it actually bridges the gap between the missing implementation that you might have for the functions that you're using in the JavaScript. Okay, and remember we discussed that we need to add this as a dependency and not dev dependency, so we're just adding that. Okay, next thing we want to do is basically create a configuration file, guys. Just to let you know, Babel has two configuration file. One is babel.config.js and second is babel rc. Okay, so you can use either of these. Okay, babel.config.js is used for project-wide configuration. You can use it if you want to programmatically create configuration, or if you want to compile node modules. However, Babel RC is basically a file relative configuration. If you have a static configuration that only applies to a single package, then you can use this. Okay, and you can often place all of your repo configuration in the root. Okay, so all of this information will be available on Babel. If you go over here, let's close this one. Configure Babel, yeah, this one. You can see you have configuration information for babel config.js, and you have babel rc configuration as well. Okay, but for this video we're gonna do it with babel rc. Okay, so let's create one. .babel rc. Babel is automatically going to pick up babel rc file if you create one, and it's a hidden file. That's why there's a dot before this. Okay, and inside of this we just need to mention the presets, because remember we spoke about Babel doesn't do anything on its own. So if I run Babel, nothing is going to happen until we provide the plugins to it, right? So presets are a group of plugins, is what we discussed just a while back. So preset-env is basically we're just telling Babel that use presets, preset-env, which is a set of plugins, to go ahead and transpile the code and convert into JavaScript that browsers can understand. Okay. Next thing what we're going to do is basically create some files and folders. The first thing we're going to create is source directory. This is where our index, which is the entry point index file, will reside. So index.js. Then we'll create a dist directory where Babel is going to produce the transformed file. Okay, so dist. Okay, and right, and let's just put an arrow function inside of index.js, which is, so of course browser wouldn't understand that. Okay, what is the return outside function definition? Okay, looks like it's not understanding ES5. Just need to configure my PHP Storm to understand it. So let's go to JavaScript and change from, you can see that it was a ECMAScript 5, that's why it was not understanding. Let me change this to ES6 so that my PHP Storm can understand. Okay, brilliant, now it's understanding that. Great. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is set up a script for Babel. So if you go to package.json, currently we have tests. We can just get rid of this. We can just write Babel. Okay, and you can run the bash script in node modules.bin.babel. So you can run Babel using this command. However, we'll just put the path, so we can just type npm run Babel and it'll execute this line of code. And we need to mention where what will be the entry point. So it's source, and then D, which means for the output, and then dist. Okay, so this is where it's going to output the file. Okay, and by default it's going to take index.js as an entry and output as index.js as well. Okay, great. Now let's run Babel and see what happens. Okay. npm run Babel. Okay, what's the issue? Can't find module Babel preset-env. Did we install it? Let me just check. Yeah, we haven't installed it, so I'm just going to add that to the blog. Let me just install this one. Sorry guys, I missed that. npm install, and we need to install it as dev dependency. Okay, so once it's installed, let's run Babel again. npm run Babel. So when we're running this command, basically it's going to the script over here and it's just running this entire script. So brilliant, it says successfully compiled one file with Babel. Let's have a look. So ideally what this would have done is this would have taken the index.js file and the preset which is basically a bunch of plugins, would have helped Babel in converting the modern JavaScript code, which in this case ECMAScript 6, into something that browser can understand. So let's have a look. You can see in dist it's already created index.js by default, and you can see that this is of course the code that browser will understand, right? So it's now one arguments length, one, all of that information. Okay, so now this is something you can run on Internet Explorer as well, or other browsers that don't understand it, right? So that's how it is done with the Babel CLI. Now let's do it with Webpack. Okay, so for Webpack, there's a completely entire series, guys, that I have created on YouTube, as well as there are blogs for the same as well. I'll leave the reference link in the description box. You can check it out. So I'm not going to spend time about discussing Webpack, because you guys can go out there and just learn from there. Okay, so let's continue. So let's do it with Webpack now. Okay, so what we're going to do is let's just create another project. So I'm going to come out of it. I'm going to create mkdir Babel Webpack project. And again, you know the drill. You just need to use npm run npm init. Yes. Okay. Then you need to install all of this. Then polyfill as well. Okay, I guess it's going to take some time to load. Okay, I can pause the video. Okay, now we need to install the polyfill as a dependency. And okay, right. So I'm just going to open up that project. Babel Webpack project, and again, you know that you need to create the configuration file both for Babel as well as for Webpack. So for Babel, we need to create babel rc.babel-rc, and for Webpack, we'll create webpack.config.js. If you don't create this file, Webpack already has default configuration that is going to use. However, we need to add the configuration for the plugins that we are using. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so let's do this. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of this information here. So what are we doing over here? We are adding this preset, just telling Babel that use these presets for your transpilation. We are setting modules to false. What does that mean? Okay, so guys, module false means that, hey Babel, don't do anything with the modules and let Webpack handle it. The reason for this is Webpack now understands modules natively. It understands both ES6 modules, ES modules as well as common JS modules. Okay, so we shouldn't tell Babel to do that. Let Webpack handle that. That's why we are setting modules to false. Okay. So Babel only includes the code for a function that you are using node modules and for the rest of it, and this is important for tree shaking and live code inclusion. Okay, what next? Okay, so as it's explained over here, Babel preset-env allows you to target the last two or one version of specific browsers. This we have already discussed and explained. Okay, great. Now the next thing is that we need to add the scripts for these. So for Webpack, we're going to put Webpack, and let's do it in watch mode, and let's put mode is equal to development, and let's put this to dev. So for dev we're going to run this, and then for production we'll name it as prod, our script as prod, and we'll put it as Webpack mode is equal to production. I know you guys will remind me about this comma. I'll put it, don't worry. Okay, great. Now the next thing is that we can run Webpack now. Let's try that. Okay, I think we have not added the configuration for Webpack, so let's do that. Okay guys, so let's add the configuration for Webpack config.js. I'll explain to you what all of this mean. So here we are including the path to resolve the path. Basically we have just installed path npm module. Okay, we are saying module.export. So module.export is basically the syntax for CommonJS, so that we have all of this entire object available to the outside world, in this case to Webpack. Okay, this context, which is going to take the directory name, which means the root directory. Entry point is taking index.js, which means that take index.js from source directory. So of course we need to create source directory, create index.js inside of it. Okay, what's happening here? Okay, it's a comma missing over here. Well, that's fine. Okay, and then I'm just going to paste the code that we had copied on top, which is this one. Okay, so pasted the code, and then output path is going to resolve the path from this directory. So let's create one. This directory. So this is where the output will be produced. It should be main.js. Okay, and then you have it's going to use these rules, these modules. Okay, so it's going to use babel-loader to convert the modern JavaScript into the JavaScript that browsers can understand. Okay, so now I think we can run pm run dev. Let's try it. Brilliant. So you can see that Webpack has converted index.js codes into main.js. Okay, and you can see your code right here. Okay, so your arrow functions are converted into the ES5 over here. Okay, for production you can run npm run prod. Since we have run the npm run dev, it's watching it, so if you make any changes to your file, then those changes will be reflected immediately. So if I go to index.js and if I just do console log on top, you can see that it's creating the build again into main.js. So to see that, if I delete it, if I make a change here, save it, you can see the Webpack is running again, right? And it's created the main.js again. Okay guys, so that's about it for Babel and setting up Babel with Webpack as well as with Babel CLI. If you did like my video guys, please do share it with others, You can follow me on Twitter, Medium, and you can do subscribe to my channel as well. Guys, take care. Bye bye.